All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. A few questions came in. We'll see where this goes. So there was a question. Whatever, it's kind of a long question here, but the question basically is that a person, let's say they read Chumash with commentary, and they see that there's disagreement. The rabbis disagree. That seemingly they disagree a lot. Right? The question was, they seem to guess things as if they're not 100% sure. I mean, whatever, we're going to analyze all this. Like, for instance, this Rav will say, Jacob did this because of X. Then someone else says, another Rav says, well, no, it's not the case. I did it because of Y. Now, if it's an historical event, how can they disagree? Right? So he cites, a number of examples. Just one example, divorce with Jacob, at this point, subject of another dispute, according to Rashi and the Ramban. Rashi cites and Moshe Darshan quotes him quite often, who states that she was a nurse that Lavan had given to Rivka when she left to marry Isaac. Right? Genesis chapter 24, verse 59. Now, Rivka doesn't know Jacob's coming home, so she sends Devorah to Haran. Tell him it's finally safe to go back, but she died on the way. Right? So that's how seemingly Rashi brings out, according to Moshe Darshan. Comes on the Ramban, he says, why would Rivka do that? Send an elderly woman such a strenuous trip. So he says that really she was gone and went back to Padam Aram after Rivka's marriage. Right? But when Yaakov left Lavan, he took Devorah with him in a tribute to his mother Rivka, and he would support her in her old age. So again, there's a difference of opinion here. Now, the assumption this person is making, or statement that they're saying, is one of them is 100% wrong. Right? That's the statement. So how can you trust anything they say? Different opinions. Right now. So we're gonna get to that. But another part of the question is, on some halachic questions, they can't be both right or wrong. Right? Neither can be right. Because, in other words, if it's Jewish law, seemingly there's one opinion. We're not going to have multiple opinions. Could be, in order to analyze it, maybe they'll differ in certain parts, not in all of it. So the assumption in the question is, well, isn't history? How do you not know the information? Don't Jews have a basic Masorah, right? A tradition. Or let's say better, don't they have the best Masorah? An unbroken chain to what's going on, right? That is basically the question. So definitely a good question here, right? Thorough question here, no question. The question is, how do we look at it? So let's go back. So if anyone's listening to any of my class on the book of Leviticus, right? So there are different opinions. There are different opinions on all kinds of things. Now, the question is on these type of things, do the differing opinions, do they matter? Meaning, do they have any significance when it comes to Jewish law? Are there any practical ramifications? Right? So now the assumption here is, well, how come they didn't get it right? It's not a question of getting it right or wrong. Right? First of all, you're talking about 4,000 years gone by. Right? It's not a big game of telephone, right? That we understand by oral law. There are a lot of chains. Each one memorizing whatever they're going to memorize. So we do know oral law is intact. Right? Go watch my video on Tanakh Talk, spoke about that. We know oral law is intact. But a lot of these things, you can have different opinions. And the reason is because one reason is there are no practical ramifications. Right? Whether, like in this case, we use this case as an example. Right? That Rashi says that he sent the Vor to Haran and she died on the way. Right? In order that he should know it's safe to return. The Ramban says he never would have done that. Right? She never would have done that. Now again, there are things like, for instance, the Medrash. The Medrash are Tanaitic sources that didn't make it into the Talmud. For whatever reason, they didn't make it into the Talmud. Now, Midrashim can contradict each other. They can contradict each other. So you're going to say which one is right? Maybe we have proof in other ways where one's going to be more right than the other. But in the end, we always try to the best of our ability to answer our contradictions. When it comes to Talmud, we go, very far to do that because a lot of the discussion has to do, at the end, how we do things, practically speaking. Right? How we're going to give the sacrifice, or, this other law, Shabbos, other things. So you can have different opinions. Question is, what's the opinion codified by Jewish law? Not everyone can be right. That's true. Right? I'd say 95, 96% of all Jewish law, Ashkenazim and Sephardim agree. There are differences. But even if they disagree, right, I'll give one example, the laws of Shabbos. For a Sephardic person, let's say he's got a kugel, right? It's dry, it's cold, right? He wants to eat it on Shabbos day. What does he do? If you're Sephardic, I can put it directly on a hot plate. Not a problem. Let it heat up as much as it wants. Why? Because it's already cooked. And Ashkenazi will not do that. If they want to cook it, even though it's fully cooked, it's cold, it's ice cold, you have to put it on an upside down pot or an upside down aluminum pan. Why? Because if I don't do that, it looks like it's cooking. According to Sephardim, they're not worried about that. Because it's already cooked. And anyway, you're not going to turn up and down the temperature. It doesn't matter. It's already cooked. So you have a difference of opinion. Who's right? Not a question of who's right over here. The question is whose customs you go like. If you're Ashkenazic, you won't do that. If you're Sephardic, you will do that. Another point in case, blessing over matzah. Right? What's a blessing over matzah for someone who's Ashkenazic? During the week, including Passover, hamotzi. It's like bread. Whatever you put on it, let's say during the year, you put peanut butter, you put cheese, whatever you put on it, it's nullified to the matzah, you make hamotzi. Say grace after meals. If you're Sephardic, during the year, it's like a cracker. They look at it like a cracker. If it's like a cracker, it's mizonos. They're not eating it like bread. But on Passover, there's a difference. Even if you're Sephardic, come on Passover, you're going to wash. Just like Ashkenazim do, because of the importance of Passover. They really hold it's a cracker? Okay, Passover's different. Passover, different entity. So now you're going to say, how can they disagree? They have different customs, right? On certain things. Not everything. The majority of things they agree. So when it comes to the picayune details of Jewish law, there are things they may disagree. That's not a contradiction. That doesn't mean there's one way or another way. It's my way or the highway. Doesn't mean that. There can be different customs, not a contradiction. But over here, so that's when you're talking about Jewish law. But what if you're talking about, stories in Genesis? I'll give you an example. One of the commentaries says that Naamah, time of Noah, was Noah's wife. Right? Some of the commentaries say that Naama was the wife of the king of the demons. Now, if you tell me, Noach died and she married the king of the demons, one thing. But the reality is, how can she be both? She can't be both. So I remember I asked my Rebbe this question. I said, according to this opinion, Naama is Noach's wife. So I was like, no. So according to this opinion, Naama is the wife of the king of the demons. He's like, no. So I said it was right. He didn't give me an answer. Right? So the assumption here is, well, either she's one or the other. Isn't it true? We have an unbelievable Masorah, an unbelievable tradition. That is true. That 100% is true. And things like this, not so clear-cut. Not so clear-cut. Because there are contradictions. But even if you say there are contradictions, in this case, does it really matter? Doesn't matter. That's not what the person's asking, but this is what I'm pointing out. Does it really matter? If according to one opinion, Naama is the wife of Noah. According to another opinion, she's the wife of the king of the demons. In the bigger scheme of things, does it matter? Doesn't matter. If you're talking about Jewish law, then there are ramifications. Right? We have hierarchy, how we learn. If you have disagreement, right? I was learning something this morning. And it comes out, according to one of the commentators, when you have a disagreement, these two rabbis, you go like this rabbi. And he brought down another opinion and said, not that way. But what's the bottom line? The bottom line is, how do we hold according to Jewish law? So in this case, one opinion is right. Can't have both opinions. Because there's a tremendous difference between the two. Right? Not going to go into the case, doesn't really matter. But there's a big difference. So you can't say both are right. So when it comes to Jewish law, you have to know the hierarchy. You have to know how we learn. You have to know how the commentaries go. Even if there's a disagreement, bottom line, how does it go according to Jewish law? That's the bottom line. So what happens? We have a hierarchy, how we go. Normally we say, go after the majority. Right? Sometimes you can have one opinion against the majority, and you go according to that one opinion. Why? Different reasons. Normally we don't say that. There are certain cases that may be the case. But you see, two different rabbinic authorities can learn the same thing, come to different conclusions. But even if they come to different conclusions, again, this is not really what the point the person said, but I just want to point out, even if they reach different conclusions, one of them is going to be right, one of them is going to be wrong. Because it's going to go according to the code of Jewish law. And even within the code of Jewish law, could be that second opinion we don't really hold like, could be under certain circumstances we would. Right? We could use that second opinion for other things. It depends on the thing at hand. But normally there's a criteria of how we're going to learn and who we're going to go with. If you're Ashkenazic, right, we go like the Ramah. Ramosha Isserlis wrote his glosses on the Talmud, on the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. And if he disagrees with Rav Yosef Karo, the Shulchan Aruch, we go like the Ramah. But there are things we go like, if the Ramah doesn't disagree, so then we go like the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch, most of the time, goes like the Rambam. there are times that others disagree with the Rambam. So they disagree with the Rambam. The question is, what are the ramifications? They have to know, specific cases and how it goes. There's a hierarchy. So when a person knows how to learn and they see how it goes, they understand. They understand how it works. Right? It's not just haphazard. Right? In many ways. But see, that wasn't the question. See, I dodged the question. But that wasn't really the question. I just wanted to point that out. The question was, you have a case like this, that the commentaries disagree. Why do Lavan do like this? One says like one reason, another says like another reason. Can they both be right? They can both be right. They can both be right. How can they both be right if they disagree? Because nobody's saying that one opinion is going to be good for everybody. They're going to ask questions on each other. Right? A lot of times the Ramban asks questions on Rashi. And he says, how could Rashi say this? How could Rashi say that? We got another source like this or like that. Now, in a case where there are practical ramifications, they'll disagree according to Jewish law. Okay? So then we have to see how we go according to Jewish law. Right? But in this case, right, the case over here is that we use our case of Naamah. She cannot be both the king of the demons, the wife of the king of the demons, and the wife of Noah. Now, if they're both at the same time, they lived in the same time, okay, that's not a contradiction. Right? It's one or the other. So even if one says, she's the wife of Noah. Now, is it possible she could be the wife of the king of the demons, depending on how long she lives? Could be. But the question is, don't we have a true tradition? Don't we have the best tradition out there? And if we have the best tradition out there, what's the problem? Why couldn't they get the information? Why couldn't they get it straight? The simple answer is that a lot of these things we can't know. Can't know for sure. It's their opinion. So if it's their opinion about something that's esoteric, what does esoteric mean? It means, we're not talking about Jewish law. You can have different opinions, but we're going to go according to one. Most likely. Or sometimes Ashkenazic opinion will differ from Sephardic opinion. Okay. So you're going to say they both can't be right. For the Ashkenazim, this is what we do. For Sephardim, this is what we do. Now, in this case, is it possible that she could be married to either one? It's possible. Totally possible. But what's the question? What's the obvious question? Which one is it? That's the question. And the answer is not clear. There are contradictory things over here. But see, when we speak in the book of Leviticus or anywhere in the Torah, and we say there are different opinions, so there could be ramifications according to Jewish law. And therefore, it's going to come out different according to each opinion. Or let's say there are no ramifications. If there are no ramifications within Jewish law, then we're not going to say, well, he's right, he's wrong. We're not going to say that because we don't know for sure. It's an opinion. There could be contradictory sources. So how do we know? We don't for sure. We're not given information. I think you say, what about the Midrashim? Don't the Midrashim fill in a lot of holes? It does. But there are contradictions in the Midrashim also. So how do I know which one is right? If we know other information, it could be we could say one Midrash is stronger than another. We could say that. And bring proof from other sources. Or we can say, we don't know. we're not really sure. But when it comes to Jewish law, it's a totally different thing. You can have different opinions, but the code of Jewish law is going to say we do like this and like this. And if it's Ashkenazim, we do like this. Sephardim, we do like this. Right? So I don't know if that fully answers the question. Because what the person wants to know is one is right, one is wrong. How did they get history wrong? Right? So now a lot of these questions, seemingly, why did Lavan do like this? Why did Yaakov say this? Are there any ramifications? Now, what are you going to tell me? What's someone going to tell me? They're going to say, because of course it makes a difference. One's going to be right, one's going to be wrong. Not necessarily. Why do I say not necessarily? Because in these, it's speculation. The Ramban, Rashi, trying to explain what the text means. But they can contradict each other. But if there are, if there are no ramifications, halachically speaking, could they both be right? Technically they could be right. If you find more people that side with Rashi against the Ramban, then we'd assume Rashi is right. Right? You go according to the majority. But see, there are things we're not in their heads. Why did Yaakov do like this? So maybe we have sources to tell me why. But maybe we have contradictory sources. One will say like this, one will say like that, just like this person brought up. Right? But again, even if you give two different answers, whether you say Yaakov would never send this old woman on her way, or the fact that, maybe he did and she died on the way to give over information, or whatever the case was, that's not necessarily such a, you could say there are two different opinions. You're right. Practically speaking, could both be right. You'll say they disagree with each other. So if they disagree with each other, that's the question. Right? How come you don't have 100% accuracy? Because there are things that we don't know for sure. In the time before the Torah, there are things that we don't know, that aren't clear. We can speculate. We have some sources. But when it comes to oral law, that's a whole different thing. Oral law, there are a whole bunch of chains. Memorizing the Mishnah and all that. So a whole bunch of chains. So that's a different issue. That we have statements said like this, said like that, said like the other thing. Maybe the contradictions, maybe not. And then you see the early commentators, later commentaries, what they do. The time of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, we also have sources. But are all those sources authoritative in the sense where it's going to give one answer? We don't see that. There are potentially multiple answers. But at the end of the day, it's not something we get so excited about and say, hey, how come there be contradictions? Because they're not sure. Some say it's like this, some say it's like that. Are there practical ramifications? No. Could they both be right technically? Maybe. Maybe different aspects of the same thing. But the person has 100% right. In my case, Nama can't be both people. She can't be married to Noah and married to the king of the demons. Right? If she lived long enough and Noah died and she married the king of the demons, okay, it's not a contradiction. That wouldn't be a contradiction. If they're at the same time, they're living at the same time, let's say, and you tell me that she's one or the other. Well, it can't be both. I agree. So the question is, who's right? We don't know. And that's the question. How do we not know? Why isn't there a clear-cut tradition? So simply, I would say back then, we didn't have a clear-cut tradition. There were different opinions. Didn't come out so clear. like oral law did. And not only that, you can have midrashim even at the time of the Talmud that contradicts. So how can they both be right? They can't. But, when it comes to midrashim, they're less authoritative than the Talmud itself, even though they're similar statements like the Talmud. Regardless, we don't get lost and upset by these contradictions. We can try and figure it out, try and see, well, maybe, how can we answer the contradiction? But even if we're stuck and we can't answer the contradiction, we're not going to necessarily lose that much sleep over it. It's a contradiction, okay? But when it comes to the Talmud, you get a contradiction, Talmud goes to town to get an answer. And a lot of times, Talmud comes up with an answer. But the ramifications, even with some of the answers that disagree with the one that we hold like, there are ramifications that we may have to worry about those answers also in different circumstances. Sometimes we're not going to worry about it at all. I'll give an example. The beginning of the Mishnah Berurah talks about getting up in the morning. There's an obligation to wash your hands. Right? Why? There are two opinions. One opinion is you probably touched somewhere of your body that's normally covered, and that you have to wash your hands. Touched your socks, touched other places, right? So you'd have to wash your hands. One opinion. Second opinion is that since our soul went up, and the soul comes back, we're like a new creation. God gave us our soul back, so we're alive. So for that, you have to wash your hands. So there are a couple opinions over here. Which one is right? We don't know. But what does the code of Jewish law say? It says the Shulchan Aruch, you got to wash your hands anyway. That's what you got to do. So it comes on, the Mishnah Berurah and says, why? Potentially, why? Well, if it's in the Talmud, don't we have one clear-cut answer? We don't. We don't always have one clear-cut answer. And even if we do, you can have early commentators argue about it. Or not. Or later commentaries. We don't know. But at the end of the day, does it matter? In this case, doesn't mean we don't have to try and understand it. Practically speaking, a Jew wakes up in the morning. Are they going to wash their hands? They're going to wash their hands 3 times before they go to the bathroom. That's what they're going to do. Right? Doesn't matter if you hold like this one or that one. It's irrelevant. Okay. Doesn't mean we don't have to try and understand it. Who's more right, less right. Who cares? Right? That doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you're going to wash your hands. Finished. That's what you're going to do. You're going to wash your hands. Doesn't matter. You go like one or the other. Who cares? I have to wash my hands. Now, when it comes to learning, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty and see which one, we think is right or more right or whatever. But when we get to the bottom line is, it doesn't really matter who's right. The bottom line is I got to do it. Doesn't matter who holds, for what reason. We don't care what reason necessarily. Bottom line is I'm going to do it. Right? I'll give another example. Person makes Kiddush the first night on Sukkot. What should a person's intention be? Person's intention when they make Kiddush is, like on any holiday, to remember it's coming out of Egypt. Right? So either we're thinking that, or let's say better. Really, the two reasons that a person should have intention when they sit in the sukkah the first night, when they make Kiddush, is either because of the mitzvah of sukkah, right? The intention is I'm doing the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, or we're remembering the Ananei HaKavod. We're remembering the clouds of glory. That's why you have a white, what's it called? A white bad, some sort of fabric. You have white that goes around the sukkah, reminding us of the clouds of glory. So you have intention for both. So which one is it? Oh, different opinions in the Talmud. One says because of the sukkah itself. One says because of clouds of glory. So what do? We remember both. Could it be one or the other? Could be. But comes along the code of Jewish law says I should remember both. But you go according to both opinions. So you have to see in each case. Now, where are the ramifications? I get it. But sometimes even with the ramifications, I got to do it. Doesn't matter why. The relevant one. You're going to say, what's a leap of faith? I just have to believe and that's it? No. You got to understand. You got to delve into, okay, that's what learning is. Right, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to make Kiddush. Still going to sit in the sukkah, but I have to know what to do practically. So, comes along the code of Jewish law, says, I should remember both. I should have that in mind. I shouldn't just remember one or the other. Question is, if I got one and I didn't have that intention, do I fulfill my obligation or not? So that's a question. But there are two opinions. Two opinions, down what brings down. But at the end of the day, I got to sit in the sukkah. That you're going to have intention. Sitting in the sukkah. 100%. Right? If I didn't have the intention for the end of the Hakavot, do I have to go back and make Kiddush? Most likely not. Most likely not. Minimal level, I have intention for the sukkah. That's it. That's all I have to do. And then I'm good. But there are numerous ramifications. And a lot of times, as long as I know what to do, what's behind it, even though I think it's more important in general, what's behind it doesn't really matter. And even if they're different opinions, well, how can they both be right? They can't. That's true. Because if we hold one opinion according to the other, or we go according to the majority, so the minority opinion we don't do. But sometimes we do worry about the minority opinion. Sometimes, if I didn't do certain thing, whatever it is, then I could rely on that, that lenient opinion, even though we don't normally do it. So that I hear. But I'm just pointing out the other things that don't have any ramifications at all. Could be a number of opinions. So you can say, how do you know which one is right? Why do we have accurate records? We don't have accurate records on that. There are contradictory midrashim. We don't have accurate records on it. Right? Maybe some things are more obvious than others. But you see the commentaries say a lot of different things about a lot of things, especially in the book of Genesis. A lot of things. How they learn, extrapolate. Some things have ramifications in Jewish law. Most things don't. In the book of Genesis. Most things don't. Rabbi wrote a commentary on the book of Genesis, and he asked a lot of questions according to halacha, based on certain things. Okay. So, that's a little bit different. But, a lot of times in these type of esoteric things, one opinion is just as valid as another. Even seemingly contradicts it. So you're going to say, so what is it? Could be like this, could be like that. But that's not something, according to Jewish law, we're losing sleep over. We're totally not losing sleep over. Why not? Because at the end of the day, we have to try and understand it. Right? That's true. 100% we have to try and understand it. Right? But in the end, does it really matter? Right? Now, it sounds almost heretical to say. You gotta say, what? It doesn't matter who Noah's wife was. No, it does matter. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. But in the bigger scheme of things, having that contradiction doesn't really matter. It's insignificant in that way. So again, I don't know if that's going to satisfy this person or not. But the claim, again, let's just say, the claim is one of them's 100% wrong. Not necessarily true. There are different opinions how to look at it. Right? One says he would never do this. One says, yeah, that's what he did. Right? So which opinion's right? We don't know. We're not sure. Is each opinion valid? It's valid. Unless you knock the other opinion out and you have other proof. But even if they have different opinions, that practically speaking, doesn't really matter. There are no ramifications. So these are more esoteric things where there could be different opinions. One is just as valid as the other. It's not a question of, isn't it a true Masorah? Don't we have the true tradition? And therefore, there'll never be contradiction. What do you mean? Why not? Look at the Talmud, contradictions all over the place. But there's a way to solidify the contradiction. There's a way to answer up. Sometimes we don't have an answer. Sometimes the answer is got to wait till Elijah the prophet comes. And we're going to be stringent, do this and do that. But it's something esoteric. Okay, I have to try and understand it. There are different opinions. But if there's no ramifications according to Jewish law, can each opinion be valid? Sure. But how can they be the same person? Maybe they can't. But, could this person have been this or that? Could be. When I asked my Rebbe this, he just looked at me. Like, what are you asking for? I'm not saying this is a dumb question. He's saying, what are you asking for? There are no ramifications. Could be this, could be that. We don't know for sure. It's not a question of Masorah tradition. Because if you're talking about the patriarchs and everything went on there, it's a whole different world compared to Talmud. Totally different. So we can have contradictions. We can have different opinions. We can speculate. Right? The rabbis giving their own opinions based on midrashim, Gemaras, other things. But if there are no practical ramifications, then okay, that's their opinion. Someone's going to say, so why can't I do that? Why can't I make my own opinion? So a person can learn certain things, but also it has to be based on something. It can't be just based on what you think. Right? Nobody cares what anyone thinks. Is it within Torah? Is it within parameters of Torah? So if it is, okay. If it's not, different issue. Someone asked, so that's how I would answer that question. Someone asks, how's a JIT or a Jew study Talmud if he doesn't live in a Jewish community and have a study partner? Well, JIT is not supposed to study Talmud, first of all. That should be done after conversion. Second of all, if they were Jewish and they wanted to learn, there are organizations. There's an organization in the States called Partners in Torah, where they take somebody, somebody obviously is religious, and they partner them up to learn with somebody, obviously the same sex, depending on what the person wants to learn. Now, could that person set up, a chavrusa learning with someone else in Talmud? They can set up whatever they want. Talmud, Bible, Jewish philosophy, anything. Right? So, there are a lot of sites online for self-study. But again, Talmud's off limits. For a JIT, it's off limits. Because essentially you're not Jewish, doesn't matter if you're in training or not. Right? Certain things non-Jews shouldn't do, period. After conversion, different issue. Right? So, even if a person doesn't live in a Jewish community, but they wanted to learn, there are organizations that will set up people to learn with other people. But when it comes to learning Talmud in general, there are a lot of good sites up to do that, even by themselves. Right? But I would say like this, I had somebody that, would send me questions, about Mishnah. Whatever, he was a Jew, learning Mishnah by himself. Never learned before. He had all kinds of basic questions. I kept telling him, you have to go to yeshiva, you have to learn. Well, you have to learn with someone who knows how to learn. Because if you don't know how to learn, you can't learn it on your own. You're not going to be able to learn it on your own. Right? Talmud needs instruction. You need someone to teach you. Not saying people are stupid. You can open up an English Gemara. Go through it. Someone told me recently, before they went to yeshiva, after conversion, they wanted to get a little bit of a head start, in learning. So they picked out a certain tractate and started learning from the beginning. Right? Him and his brother, one Shabbos. And the first Mishnah was so complicated. Right? They were just told they couldn't make heads or tails out of it. They read the English, whatever. They couldn't make heads or tails out of it. Nothing to do with stupidity. They didn't know the lingo. They didn't know how to put things together. They didn't know what the cases were. Someone has to take someone through it. So learning with someone, yeah, that's definitely, an advantage. But again, there are organizations like in the States, they have partners in Torah. It's one organization. A person can be paired up with somebody to learn whatever they want. They try and pair them up with somebody that can teach them, that can learn them, like an hour a week or whatever, right? That you have to do online, right? If you're not living in an area where there are Jews, so how are you going to do that? You can't do that. But anyway, in either case, this is all a moot point because JIT should not be learning Talmud, period. Certain things that are off limits even for non-Jews in the process of conversion. That's one of them. That's definitely one of them. Someone asks, is JIT allowed to do daily prayers? Where there's idol worship? No. If there's idol worship there, for instance, they want to, if there are idols in their house, there's a whole question. When the Torah says you don't have to bring these things in your house, question is that certainly applies to a Jew, nothing talking about. Question is that also apply to a non-Jew. Now, seemingly, a non-Jew should not go to a place of idolatry. That's for sure. So if a non-Jew want to go into a church, can't pray there. Even if you're not looking at the idols or whatever, you can't pray there. A mosque, interesting enough, if you had nowhere else to pray, you had nowhere else to go, there was a mosque nearby, you can pray there because they believe in one God. Consensus is, let's make clear, Islam is not idolatry. Consensus. So they can pray in a mosque. But if they're home and there are idols all over the place, yeah, then you wouldn't be able to pray there, right? You have to pray somewhere where the idols are not. I remember Rabbi Talbot, blessed memory, was in a hospital, in a Catholic hospital, and he took a bed sheet and covered up the cross, whatever thing on the wall. Came in, doctor, nurse, whatever came in. They, like, why is this thing covered up? So Talbot said, I'm half naked. I don't have any clothes on. Like, it's embarrassing, being in front of your God like that. So he covered it up. Question how far he got away with it, but that in a place like that, he wouldn't be allowed to pray. Right? He was on a boat. I don't remember where he was going. And they wanted to pray. Someone said, "Oh yeah, you can pray down here." Goes to the bottom of the boat. They have all these, all these idols and everything else, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll find somewhere else to pray." You can't pray in such a place, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, when he prays, he takes away the plagues in Egypt. He goes outside city limits where there's idolatry, right? He doesn't pray within those areas for that reason, for exactly that reason. Right? Does that include Modan? Include anything. You don't have to pray anything. Right? Someone says if your family's Christian, you have idols, you shouldn't be allowed to pray there, right? 100%. Or you take them, move into another room, let's say, and you pray in that room without the idols. But yeah, you cannot pray in a room with their idols. Right? That's a big problem. For no idol or JIT and someone dies and they have a service in the church, can't go. Right? That's forbidden. If it's in a place where, there are no idols there, that might be okay if it's not a service. If it's a service that people are bowing and crossing themselves, yeah, that's a problem. Even if it's outside, doesn't matter. Even if there are no idols around. Right? That's what it is. It's a service. That would be forbidden. In a Jew walking into a Reform or Conservative synagogue, also not allowed to pray there. You can say, well, it's not idolatry. It might not be idolatry in the strict sense, but they're doing all kinds of things that are terrible. So you're not allowed to pray in that sanctuary or anywhere there. Right? It's a similar thing. I mean, again, it's not idolatry. Some people would say it is, but technically it's not really idolatry, but nonetheless, shouldn't pray there. Definitely shouldn't pray there. Because of all the garbage that goes on there, you don't want your prayers there. You definitely don't, you don't want anything sticking to you there from all the heresy and everything else. Somebody asks, are we allowed to steal idols to dispose or destroy them? Now, technically speaking, that's Ganeva, it's stealing. But you're stopping someone from committing idolatry. Now, who says that's your obligation? Let's say you're a Jew, make it easy. Does it, if someone nearby, they know, a family member worships idols, are you allowed to go in their house and smash it or steal it? Now, technically, we should smash idols everywhere. True. Even outside of Israel, burn down churches and all that. Rambam says clear, can't do that today, though. Go to jail. That you can't do. Even if you wouldn't get caught, still can't do it. Still shouldn't do it. Right? But in this case, one of the reasons Rachel dies early. They have to watch my video on that. She stole, right? She stole the idols. So according to Kabbalah, I think it's Kabbalah that says that, that's why she died. She's stopping her father from being idolater. True. Very true. Right, but again, let's make clear. Who says a Jew's obligation wasn't Jewish at the time? Even she maybe kept the Torah, but she wasn't really Jewish. But who says there's an obligation for a Jew to distance a non-Jew from their mitzvahs? Sheva mitzvahs, one of the 7 mitzvahs, is idolatry. So if that's the case, don't I have an obligation to stop them? I don't have an obligation to stop them. Right? I got a troll who keep telling me, you're the Jewish people. You're chosen. You got to be out there being a light to the nations. Go convincing them to keep the 7 laws. Who says I have to do that? There's no source. None. What's the only source to bring a Jew close to his mitzvahs? Because all Jews are interrelated. We don't say that with non-Jews. Is he going to say let the non-Jews die? I didn't say let them die. That's not what I said. Someone comes, wants to know what to do, that's fine. I have to go and convince them. I have to put up signs, all churches to be no-ites. Who says I have to do that? Waste of my time. I should do that when I could have been learning. Waste of time. How are they going to find out? They'll find out. Because these are universal laws. They want to find out, they'll find out. God will help them. But I have to go out there and, save them. Who says? Right? Now, technically, I would say it'd be a big mitzvah to destroy these idols. Big mitzvah to get rid of them. Who says I have to do that? Right? So you're going to say, okay, that wasn't the question. Is the person allowed to? Technically speaking, there wouldn't be ramifications if you did. You would be allowed to. Obligated to? You're not obligated. Certainly not. But putting the stumbling block in front of someone, but you're not doing it. They're doing it. So again, who says I have to do that? Right? If a Jew brings idolatry in their house, you got to get rid of it. And someone else could come in and smash it. Now, what would happen if they take him to court? They may have to pay. They may have to pay. According to the Torah, you'd be allowed to do that. Could be for a Jew, you may be obligated to do that. The Rambam says you're obligated to do that, certainly outside of Israel. Not just smashing idols, burning down places. 100%, that's what you should do. What's the problem? We can't do that. Who says a non-Jew has to do that? Right? It's not clear according to all rabbinic authorities that shitu for a non-Jew by idolatry is forbidden. We all, practically speaking, Christianity's idolatry. Fine. But who says I can walk into someone's house? Or even if it's their parents' house and smash all the idols? Who says I can do that? I should do that. So what's the obvious example? What's the obvious example? Abraham, that's what he did. But it wasn't in his house. It wasn't in his house. He smashed the idols, and the Medrash says, in the store of his father. Right? Did he have an obligation to do so? Who says he had an obligation? Right? Obligation you don't have. They're not yours. Am I allowed to do it? You'd be allowed to do it. But if they find out you did it, they're going to make you pay for it. You say, how can I pay for it? It's idolatry. All right, so you go down the slippery slope over here. But the Rambam states clear. Outside of Israel, 100%, that's what we should be doing. Burning down all these places. Prohibition can't do that. Why can't you do it? Because it's not practical. Go to jail. You say, but that's my obligation. You have to live by the law of the land. Even if they pollute it, you have to live by the law of the land. That's what you got to do. Even though that's your obligation, the Rambam says. We can't do it. Now the question would be, what about a middle case? What about a case where you know for sure you won't get caught? If you know 100%, which you don't, but if you would know you'll never get caught, be all right. But you never know 100%. 100%. Then someone asks, if your family was watching Christian service on TV, what do? Walk out of the room. You're not allowed to watch it. They want to watch it, that's their choice. Do you have to stop them? Who says? Take a baseball bat, my Louisville Slugger, smack the TV set. You're not obligated. Totally not obligated. Right? Could you do it? Could. Person shows they're a fanatic for God, that's great. Then you say, okay, now you owe it for the TV set. Right? But, if they're watching this kind of garbage, right? I would even say like this. What if they're watching things that's, even a Jewish home? They're watching tennis match. They're watching Oprah. I don't know if she's still on, right? She's watching, things that, let's say, are not necessarily immoral. But it's very hard to find anything that's not immoral today. But let's say they're watching sports. Do you have an obligation to go in there and shut it off? Because you're going to say it's a waste of time and whatever. They're doing it to themselves. That's not my obligation. Could be I have an obligation to give mussar, to rebuke because they're doing something stupid, maybe, even if they're not going to listen. Question how far it goes. So if you're visiting family that are Christians, then should we have Shabbos in a restaurant or somewhere else? Well, if you're keeping Shabbos, you can't do that. Unless you're in walking distance or whatever. Right? Do you have to leave? No. You don't have to leave. If they're there watching something, you're keeping Shabbos. It's a different issue. It's definitely a different issue. But certainly if that's going on, you can't pray in the same place, same room. Go to another room, shut the door. That's one thing. You can't pray in the same room, while it's on. Certainly. If it's off, it's a different issue. Someone asked, how come there are not many Jewish movies about the Bible biblical offense? Well, what's the obvious answer? What would be the obvious answer? There are some. You have 10 Commandments. You do have some out there. These are not going to sell. Hollywood's not going to be interested. I think they did make a movie a number of years ago, about, coming out of Egypt, and all that, made it like I think more of a 20th century spin, whatever. But these are not going to be money makers. Definitely not money makers. What movies they have out there? They're, Woody Allen, has made a number of movies with like Jewish themes, Jewish characters, etc. That's one thing. But like, a whole thing about the Bible, who's gonna watch it? No one's gonna watch it. If they're making like some sort of documentary or something, they're not interested in making money. Okay, it's one thing, right? But if it's all about money, I want to get someone to donate this thing or whatever. Who's gonna make it? No one's gonna make it. I mean, it's kind of funny. Charlton Heston, played Moses in the Ten Commandments and played John the Baptist. Want to cover both ends, make sure, he's good at both sides. Okay, you have some movies like that, but the vast majority are not going to have that. Not going to sell, right? You're definitely not going to sell. Mainstream. There's a movie many years ago. I wouldn't recommend it. It was with Melanie Griffith. It's called The Stranger Among Us. It's about someone who becomes religious, Baal Tshuva, and someone gets killed in the Jewish community. So Melanie Griffith plays, I don't know, some sort of cop or whatever, detective, figure out who did it, et cetera. So, learn all kinds of things about the Jewish community, good, bad, whatever. And, I don't think it did so well. And I don't think it did so well in the box office. You got someone on Netflix, making a whole thing in an expose on the frum community, on the Jewish community. That's something different because you got an axe to grind. That's Orthodox or whatever it's called, right? So that they got an axe to grind. Or you got shtisel, you got other things. Why are they not mainstream? Who's gonna watch it? No one's gonna watch it. There are religious places that have certain videos for the religious community. They're not gonna make, well, it depends, how many they sell, but it's not gonna be Hollywood by any stretch. Not gonna make that kind of money, not even close. They'll make money, but depending on the budget, whatever. But these things, who's gonna want to watch it? Non-Jews want to watch this stuff. So they say, well, what about Jews? Making some of these things. So so again, I would say that it's not just about money. Not just about money. The whole point is, you're taking something to make it kosher. In a kosher way. That's what a lot of these things are. They have good messages, different things. You're making it in a kosher way. What's the problem? What's the obvious problem? You're taking something that's basically trace and you're trying to put a kosher tinge on it. You're going to say, but okay, it's better than watching other stuff. True. Better than watching other stuff in Hollywood. 100%. Better values, no cursing, this, that, fine. No modesty issues, great. That 100% I would agree. Right? So you say this generation needs it. In Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of Passover, or Sukkot, they get these concerts, different places, whatever. Okay, there are people that need it. There's a need for it. And they make money from it. Probably make good money from it. But again, who says that's necessarily a good thing? It's just copying pop culture. It's what it's doing in a kosher way. But if it's needed, okay. Yeah, but who says that's a good thing, though? This generation needs it, obviously. You got a whole moed. I remember for years, they were advertising the circus on the intermediate days of the festival. Circus! Now I'd ask, is that in the spirit of the holiday? Going to an amusement park, is that in the spirit of the holiday? Well, technically, is there anything wrong with it? Technically, no. You're not doing anything wrong, per se. It's just not in the spirit. These other things, again, can they give you good, can they teach you good lessons and different things in a kosher way? 100%. 100%. My question is, should it be done? That's the question. You can say, obviously, it should be done because there's a need in this generation, this cream puff generation. Could very well be. Could very well be. Great, when my kids were growing up, they had Uncle Moshe videos. Songs or whatever. Seemingly harmless. Right? The problem is these things, like anything else. You watch a screen, you watch a box, whatever, it's addicting. Also. Listening to music, not necessarily an issue. Plenty of good music out there, Jewish music out there, and kids stuff and whatever, plenty of things. But you get kosher games and this and that. It's like you're in a certain way, you're putting a spin on it and saying, this is okay. It's like at least common denominator. But I'm saying, for kids and educational things, it's good. But yeah, you have to limit it. It can't be all the time. You run into other issues. It's like saying, this is a kosher video. It may very well be. But what's it called? It's called the video. All videos are bad. All kosher videos are bad. I didn't say they're bad, all bad. There are plenty with good messages and all that. But, it takes a toll. Because you go from that to other things. Right? So even if kids watch, let's say Uncle Moshe and this and that, when they're younger, when they get older, they're not, it's not going to be the same. And these other movies aren't going to be the same. They want to see more, different, action, this, that. Right? It just, what do you call it? What's the word? It spirals. It definitely can spiral. So, that we have to be careful of. Someone asks, one second here. Someone asks, there's a lot of questions here. Someone asks, if you buy a Christian service, can you pray outside? Yeah, if there's no idolatry. There'd be no idolatry going on, it's one thing. If there's idolatry going on, I'm not sure you want to pray there. Right? In other words, if it's inside the church, the idolatry is going on. Outside the church, you're in a parking lot or whatever, you want to pray there, that's all right. Praying in the parking lot of a church might be an issue also. You want to be far enough away. So if you get far enough away, you want to pray, not an issue. If you're too close, that would be an issue. Right? That definitely would be an issue. Let me see here. Let's see. If a person has no wine, Kiddush can be said over 2 Shabbos loaves. True. Right? If you don't have wine, you can make Kiddush over challah, over rolls. Do you substitute the blessing for wine? You don't say the blessing of wine. You'll say blessing over bread, 100%. You'll make Kiddush, you'll say the blessing for Kiddush, you just won't say it over wine, and you make the blessing for Hamotzi, right? For grace after meals. Someone asks, if you're outside the house, the household has idols. So yeah, if you can't pray in the house, you pray outside. That there's no issue. Right? You can't pray in a place where there are idols. If you take the idols out, it's one thing. If you don't take the idols out, then you have to pray outside. Right? Definitely true. Definitely true. So here, even if, let's say, someone died and burials at a funeral home of a non-specific religion. Again, if it's a religious prayer service, doesn't matter if it's a neutral place. If it's a religious prayer service, forbidden. 100% forbidden. Right? Doesn't matter if it's in a neutral place. Idolatry is idolatry. Right? It doesn't matter where it is. Right? It doesn't have to be in the church. That would be worse. But if it's anywhere and they're praising him and they're bowing to him and all these stupid things, so yeah, then you can't be part of it. 100% you can't be part of it. Interesting. So a non-Jew commits suicide. Right? Suicide also be forbidden for a non-Jew. Right? Just like it's forbidden for a Jew, be forbidden for a non-Jew also. So yeah, it should be any prayer service. Should be any prayer service whatsoever. But if a person felt compelled they have to go, even if it's in a neutral place, then if it's a service, you can't be there. You definitely can't be there. That I don't think there's any question. Someone asked, can a shackle beverage, beer, liquor, coffee used for kiddush for lunch? Not for Friday night. Friday night's a Torah obligation. So if it's Torah obligation Friday nights, then you have to make on wine and grape juice. If you don't have wine and grape juice, you make on challah. You make on bread. But at Shabbos day, you can make on beer. That you can make on beer. One second here. Are no one's obligated modest. Women should be. They don't, it doesn't have to be exactly like wheels, but yeah, they should not be dressed in a provocative way. What about men? So men, there are certain things. Certain things also, have to be careful of when it comes to modesty. Right? If can they walk around without a shirt on? No. Right? That should be that's immodest. Right? Can they walk around in shorts, outside amongst women? Right? Also be an issue. Right? Thing would be an issue. Now, only men can't do that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let's say, even by Jews, you can say, let's say, it's an older community, so men and women aren't necessarily dressed, appropriately. So what? No matter if they're old or not. Modesty is modesty. It doesn't change, right? Would that be part of sexual immorality? Probably. I would say it's a moral imperative. Maybe it doesn't come on to sexual immorality because that's very specific, who you're not allowed to be with, right? But it could be, a moral imperative, not to dress in a provocative way. Someone asked, when are we permitted to have Shabbos other than at home? Sorry, where are we permitted? You can have Shabbos in a hotel, right? As long as you have any issues with the locks and the key, and the doors or whatever, if they're electric. I mean, I would say in theory, you can have Shabbos almost anywhere, but obviously, you gotta be careful where it is. Person has to be in Sin City or something, and you're gonna be there over the weekend. So yeah, you might end up, let's say there's no community where, Jewish community, can't get invited anywhere, right? So wherever you are, if you're in a hotel, you're in a hotel room, spend Shabbos there. Doesn't necessarily have to be at home, but again, there are places that obviously are better than not. You gotta be careful. Let me see if there are any other questions. What if a convert kicks a rock through a puddle but doesn't know it's a violation of Shabbos? Well, the rabbinic prohibition. Not knowing doesn't mean it's not forbidden. If it's something forbidden, you didn't know, so you're still obligated. He just did it by accident. So it's not the same thing. It's doing it on purpose, but if you did the forbidden act, even if you didn't know it was forbidden, still makes it forbidden. Still definitely makes it forbidden. Some people, have the custom, they make Kiddush Shabbos day on whiskey. Bourbon, whatever. So you're allowed to do that. You definitely are allowed to do that. Friday night not. Right? Friday night that you're not allowed to do. Just on Shabbos day. Yeah, any other questions? Someone asked, with kids ages 3 to 5, should a person already be limiting them to Shabbos appropriate toys? Yeah. I would say by 5 or 6 is educational age. They're age 3 and they pick up a rattle and they start shaking and it makes noise. You don't have to stop them. Right? But usually by 3 or 4, they already understand. Right? But you have to educate them, yeah. The educational age is like 5 or 6. But at the same time, if they're already like 2 or 3, you can't have them do things that are forbidden, right? They understand, they turn on the light, they don't have to turn that light on, don't do it. And they do it, they don't understand, They do understand yes and no. So certain things they may understand, but I would say certain toys, either they want to play with them on Shabbos, or hide them. Hide some of them that like make noise or whatever. But if they took one that makes noise, okay, right? By 5 or 6, you already have to stop them. You already have to. That's about the age of education. Now you have to stop them. But you should have appropriate things for Shabbos. That is definitely true. So if they understand they have limits, right? So you shouldn't, you shouldn't, even if you have them around, they know not to use them, so good. But if they, they still want to use them, then you have to find appropriate things. That you have to do even at that age, because they're not, again, if they picked it up, it's one thing, but you don't want them playing with it all the time, obviously. Any other questions? Is it a prohibition to learn any Torah from Christians? Yes. Why would you learn Torah from Christians? They're coming from the wrong perspective, right? It's idolatry. What do they know? Christians don't know diddly squat about Torah. And trust a word that they said about Torah, right? Oh, this is a very important point. You said it, when they make movies, we get their views and opinions. That's right. Right? That's why, that's why Hollywood is so, it's so bad, because they're putting all their garbage and all their views, all their bad views or whatever, and giving you a message. And that message, I would probably say 95% of the time, is bad. It goes against Torah. That's why movies in general should be forbidden. You got immorality, you got bad language, but you got, what's the theme? What's the theme of what they're giving over? It's usually antithetical to Torah. That's why all movies should be forbidden. Kosher movies, different issue. I'm saying, secular movies. Can a JIT ride in the car with a non-Jew on Shabbos? No, they shouldn't, unless it's an emergency. If they have to get to the hospital, but certainly better a non-Jew drive. But if they can't find a non-Jew, they can drive themselves. I had this question one. Wife was expecting, and closest hospital where I was living was like half an hour away. That's my Rebbe what to do. He said, better to find a non-Jew. Right? Better to find, they have ambulances with non-Jews that drive. Better to find a non-Jewish driver. If you can't find a non-Jewish driver, you're afraid your wife's going to give birth and get in the car yourself. It's an emergency. It's not an emergency, then technically, maybe you're not doing anything necessarily wrong, but shouldn't be done. Definitely shouldn't be done. Someone asked, so if you're visiting Christian family, you can have Shabbos in your room. Yes, 100%. I mean, technically, you can eat at the table also. It's not a problem, unless there's idolatry going on. Right? If there's idolatry going on, or they got crosses all over the place, then you'd have to, eat in your room. That would be the case. Someone says, does Lashon Hara count when it's critiquing a non-Jew? Yeah. But it depends who it is. If it's a secular Jew in general, and they desecrate Shabbos where they lose their status of a Jew, and what they've said is heretical, I can say whatever I want against it. Idolatry, I can say whatever I want against it. Make fun of it as much as I want. It's no Lashon Hara. Saying the president's a dimwit and, and all that, and he's senile. Lashon Hara is also forbidden, even if it's true. Right? That we have to keep in mind. Right? Critiquing someone, you got to be careful. That you have to be careful, because obviously it's going to make the person look bad. Right? But again, if it's someone who's idolatrous and other things, you don't have to worry about it. Don't really have to worry about it. You critique the president and say he did this, he did that, did the other thing. Here again, you have a technical issue if he's not Jewish. If you're not Jewish, technically I can speak whatever I want against it. Say whatever I want. Is it a good thing to do? Rabbi Chaim says you shouldn't do it in general. You got to be careful, because then you can speak speaking about Jews. Right? But technically there's nothing wrong with it. Make fun of it as much as you want. If it's idolatry, all the more so. Make fun of idolatry as much as we want. That's not a problem. One second. Somebody says there's a YouTube cartoon on King Solomon. They have a warning for offensive views, offensive depictions, because it's Jewish. Great. Yeah, enough said about that. Someone asks, if someone mentions biblical things about JC or Christian things, and they think the pastor, vicar, whoever, is okay, are you allowed to contradict them? You are allowed to. You're allowed to say it's not true and you don't believe it's true and it's heresy and this and that. Even seemingly they're not going to listen. If you don't say anything, so it might look like you agree. That's also true. It's definitely also true. Does that mean I have to stick up for God every second? Doesn't necessarily mean that. It definitely doesn't mean that. But if you're in a situation and people are talking they're blasphemy and saying all kinds of terrible things, then you might have an obligation to stick up. I've done it on occasion with secular Jews. They say crazy things. I just hit it on the head, even though it's probably not going to go anywhere and never going to listen anyway. Okay, but still, you say it's, you say it's false. You say it's something false or whatever. Yeah. Is it worth it? Get in a fight and and keep the peace. I mean, how much peace are you really going to keep here? With certain people, I pick my issues. And I know they're not going to listen. I'll say something anyway and move on. Not going to be peace anyway in general. But what do you learn from this? Bottom line is, gotta be careful who you hang out with. And if they're gonna say certain things, then you might be in trouble here. You might have to say something. Definitely might have to say something. But then you're gonna say, well, do I? The idea of rebuke is for a Jew, not for a non-Jew. I don't have to necessarily rebuke a non-Jew. Do I have to sit there and argue with them, prove them wrong? I don't have to do that. It's not my obligation. And the non-Jew's obligation either. And most likely, it's a waste of time. It's not going to get you anywhere. Someone, great question. Most important question is, am I going to be rocky for porn? No, not going to be rocky. We'll see. We got to actually keep costing. I might actually start making one day these TikTok videos, which I have to start doing, which I haven't got around to. But gonna have a funny costume this year. But I'm not going to give into what it is. All right, I'm going to stop there. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. There will be no Q&A on Thursday. It'll be my daughter's wedding, so I'm not going to be around. Tomorrow, there is a possibility. I might actually do it tomorrow. We'll see what's going on in my house. But otherwise, anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or be on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a good